reviews, discussions, and theories about films in horror, sci-fi, and genre. This is the Horror Deconstruction. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more.
What's up, everybody? It's the Horror Deconstruction. That loud clonking noise was Thea.
Do you want to restart it?
Yeah, it's fine.
Sorry.
With your host, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, most likely on YouTube. Give us a like, share, and subscribe. With your host, Komp and
Thea.
Yay. Today's film is...
Incantation. One of them from 2022.
Yes. Incantation 2022. 6 years ago, Lee Ronan was cursed for... Lee Ronan was cursed after breaking a religious taboo. Now she must protect her daughter from the consequences of her actions. Directed by Kevin Ko. Written by Che Wei Chang. Kevin Ko, starring Hussein Tsai, Mohammed El Jendi, and Ying Swan Ko. I was trying to think of anybody in this film who would be called Mohammed El Jendi, but I guess I can't. So this is a film that was released on Netflix a couple months ago, right?
It received international distribution from Netflix on July 8th.
It's a found footage horror film, Asian horror film, which would be, it's like a meeting of two worlds, because usually found footage movies are terrible, but usually Asian horror movies are pretty good. So we'll see where that meets with this film and how it came out for us. So this is a movie. What is it concern, Thea? What is the storyline for this movie?
So this movie is a woman named, is it Ronan? How are we saying it? She's narrating basically a collection of videos from 6 years ago when she first encountered the curse to like present day minus a few months, which is when she like readopts her birth child. So it's basically she adopts her own child who she hasn't had for 6 years, and then tells us that the reason is when she was pregnant, she was cursed because her and her boyfriend and another friend went where they weren't supposed to, basically.
So she child services essentially took her child away because they thought she was mentally ill, right?
Because she believed that she was cursed. She believed that horrible things were happening to everyone around her, and they were. But basically, over time, in treatment, a psychologist sort of told her, "You're wrong." And we're going to walk back those beliefs. And then it's been 6 years and she doesn't believe that anymore. But so she adopts her daughter and it ends up to be true.
Yeah, so this is a film that takes place within two timelines, which I think works for the film. I think it's against the detriment of the main storyline. I think the past material is much more interesting than the present material in the film. Yeah. But I think it's one of those onions that you'd peel where you find out a better story was within it. Yeah. Because for the most part, it starts out as this generic sort of film where this woman is getting a child, and you see there's something sinister is happening in the room where her child is in, and that there's some supernatural element. I think for the most part, the little kid is a good actor. Yeah. I think for the most part the whole film is casted really well. It has those generic sort of Asian horror movie tropes with it. The stuff I do like is when a character will see something in the room that nobody else can see, and I like that for some reason a lot. Yeah. But then you'll always see it like in certain footage. You'll see, I don't know why certain ghosts let themselves be filmed on some scenes, and then
sometimes you can see their hands.
And not do anything about it. Like, go, hey, look at this fucking video of a hand reaching for my daughter. Yeah. You believe me now? But they're like, nowadays you can see that on TikTok 24 fucking hours a day. And people believe this. People really believe. If you look on TikTok, like, people actually say, look, I just moved into this house, I'm renovating it. Oh, there's a scary Bible in this room. My house is haunted. And I think in real life, people would be drawn to this film as well because people want to believe that there's a supernatural element. So do I. Yeah. Like, what's your idea of supernatural and ghosts and stuff like that?
In the real world?
Yes.
I believe that people have real experiences. I myself have not, so I don't have any proof of that existing necessarily. But I don't discount like other people's stories of what's happened to them.
I want to believe that there's something. I think I think the main thing with people when they think of supernatural elements is I think people are searching for something after we're dead. I think that's the golden nugget of that sort of ideation of ghosts. I think people want to believe that there's something after this because as much as people like suffer in the world, there has to be something after this. Or you're in like eternal peace,
right,
as opposed to an eternal sleep. As of now, I think once you die, it's basically how it was before you were born. You just don't know. Like, I cannot remember what it was before you were born. I think that's what it is, and maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what people in general have. You know, they think about with ghosts and stuff like that, and wanting answers because the world is not easy when somebody dies and you can never. Like, I have had people die on me, and I'm like, oh shit, I want to tell them something, and then you're like, oh, I can't. Like, that's it. It's over. So that's why people want to investigate ghosts. They want to know if there's something else, if they can reach their loved ones. And I think with this film, that's a good sort of starting off point for people, and in Asian horror in general. So the Runan. God damn it, this name. Yeah, Runan. Her, that's my Western,
we're gonna do
piggish pronunciation of her name. It's nothing against her name being wrong or something like that. It's not. Runan has this good dynamic with her daughter. You just know it's doomed. It's essentially doomed because like all these Asian horror films, you hardly see. Only Midnight, I think, is the only. I swear to you, the only Asian horror movie that I've seen that is like, oh, okay, I'm not super depressed by that movie.
Yeah, happy ending.
Yeah, so to spoiler for Midnight, but Runan has this relationship with her daughter. There's another character, I believe is they don't have his character's name, Ying Swan Ko, who was a child's teacher or one of the minders for the little kids. The guy with the glasses.
Was he the foster father, basically?
The foster father guy, basically. I liked his character a lot because he was a very nice character.
Yeah.
And did he say that he had a daughter that died or something? Or I thought that's what it was. I think he's never had a kid, right?
He wasn't able to have kids, he said eventually.
He's like a genuinely nice character that is looking out for the little girl. Like he's
and by extension, the mom.
And of course, he gets a horrible fucking ending in this movie. And you're just like, fuck. Like, couldn't there have been like just some sort of situation? But that's how it is with horror films. Like, the nicest person will get wiped out just to show how horrible this curse is in the movie. We recently saw a movie about telepathic kids, and that happens in there too. Just like, it just gives you a miserable experience. It's like, fuck. Like, you really want the villain to suffer if they kill a very innocent character, but there's no central villain in this movie. And when you're dealing with a supernatural force, for the most part, like when it's a cult film, the cult always wins in the end. When it's a supernatural ghost movie, they're gonna come back. Like, it's a fucking ghost. Like, what can a human being on this plane do to them? So I think, for the most part, the first half of this film was a little bit generic. Like, the part where the kid is like, not floating, but like saying creepy things. It's just like, okay, I've seen this 100 times before. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Did the interest pick up for you at any certain point where you thought, okay, this is better than average, or you thought it was sort of streamlined through?
I would say I think it's about halfway through when you actually start to see some of the creepy stuff that happened in the past. I mean, the past is the stronger story by far. Even though it's like fairly simple, it's like. They're documentarians. They have like a spooky YouTube channel. They're going to this tunnel to go into it. They're not allowed to go into the tunnel. Then they do it anyway. Like it's a fairly typical found footage storyline, but that's the part that had the most, creep factor, the most.
I'll give credit to them for having really good production design stuff in this film. There's a young girl who is treated as some sort of vessel to keep off this ghost. And there's parts where she has all this material written on her, which I think is a really good look to it. I think the little village looked cool. I would have liked to spend more time in that village. For me, it looks a little bit small. I don't know. I guess a village would be small in this area. But I think, like you said, I think it picks up and then it kind of goes tired a bit with the rooftop scene.
Yeah.
When they're showing the apartment around, I thought she fell off the roof, and I was like, wow, this fucking movie just did that? Like, I was like, wow, like, that woke me up, honestly. But then it kind of came back to normal. But I thought that was a really interesting, like, a really cool scene. If they went all the way with it, but then there would be no point for the rest of the movie.
Right.
But you're right, when the movie goes back in time, it brings me to films like, there's a movie called The Medium that's on Shudder that Danny and I reviewed, which is essentially very similar to this with a cursed woman.
right.
And a town. And I thought that was a really, honestly, I think that was a better film with a better first half.
Right.
And then it kind of becomes generic at the end, as opposed to this, which is generic and gets a better final half.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the implication with ghost stories with this type of film. A great found footage movie. I don't know if you ever saw it, called Noroi, The Curse.
I haven't. No, it's been on my list for a long time.
Yeah, I think to me it's the best found footage horror movie of all time, of ghosts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I like the implication of the supernatural, as opposed to, because found footage is a little bit harder with the ghost stuff, because once you see, we're trying to take in the reality of like a camera pointing at somebody, right? And not all cameras are well, because she has a pretty fucking good camera, honestly. Although nowadays a lot of like cameras are good, like cell phone cameras and stuff like that. But her cameras look like cinema quality camera, so it doesn't look like a fucking phone or anything like that. She dropped money on this shit. So when you see a ghost on high definition, it's gonna be a little bit more obvious, as opposed to why people like on TikTok. Because the camera's quality is so shit, you can be like, what the hell was that, a hand? You can be like, it's a little bit more.
There's a little bit more open to interpretation.
So in here, when you see a ghost hand, you can be like, hey, that's fucking Photoshop. That's like, you can see it very clear. And I like the implication more here as to, like, when the guy runs out of that little chamber that they went through, that little tunnel, and he's like going crazy.
Yeah.
Because he saw something and we don't know what it was. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think it would probably be better if we didn't see what was happening, but I did like the hands coming through the ceiling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's been used in like hundreds of horror movies.
Yeah.
And I thought it was used well in here. There's a movie that Danny and I did, which is from the same director of Noroi, called A Cult, which is another movie you should see. You should see them back to back. And there's an implication at the end of that film about what's in the afterlife, but then they actually show, and it undoes the whole film with the last 5 minutes. If you cut the movie before the last 5 minutes, one of the greatest movies ever. So I like the implication here, but we actually do see what's going on. And like I said, with the art, what did you think production-wise was your favorite part of this film, or what you thought stood out look-wise in the movie?
I actually, once we got to see the tunnel and sort of the actual what happens, it was an interesting evolution, I guess, of things. Like a lot of like mainstay horror things, like human teeth and hair and mirrors and that kind of thing. But it was creepy to sort of see them sort of descend further and further down into these different stages of like the cult setup, basically. I would have liked to see more in some ways. But no, I think ultimately that was cool. I don't have this fear myself, but it did. There a lot of like the wounds and things, and the ultimate reveal was like very trypophobia, like which is like fear of like irregular patterns or clusters of holes.
Yeah.
So if you have that fear, maybe don't watch this movie.
Yeah, it's the practical effects are very good in this film.
Yeah.
I was on Facebook, and they had behind the scenes photos, and like it's nice to sort of see like the kid actors like smiling, and they have all this gore on their arms and stuff. But I did like you said, the tunnel stuff. I think the tunnel stuff is the best part.
Yeah.
To me, did you ever get to see the original Blair Witch Project?
Yes.
So Blair Witch Project as a film itself, I think I saw it as a kid in the theater. I don't know, I should have. But I remember watching it, and like it got real quiet real quick, because I think for the most part we just didn't know what was going on with the movie, because nowadays people are like, oh, this is a fucking boring movie.
Yeah.
But at the time when you bought the kind of shenanigans that they said that these actors actually disappeared, and for me there was nothing more chilling a theater experience is when they actually walk up to the house at the end of that film.
Yeah.
Because like the theater went dead fucking silent, and I was like, ooh, I got the like the willies just watching it. And I think that same effect goes for this. To a lesser effect is when they go inside that tunnel. Yeah. I think it was a great idea when they go inside this tunnel, because you don't know what you're going to see next. Yeah. Sure, it has a generic like mirrors, and I loved the fucking statue design. Yeah. So I assume they built it for the movie. Great statue design. I love whenever even there was a movie that Danny that hated. There's a statue in this movie called Nightbreed. I love whenever they create statues. I don't know what it is about, but I love sculpture, like like Donatello, Michelangelo, all those great artists, not the turtles, the actual artists.
Or
so
both.
when you put Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
When they build statues in production design for a film, I always appreciate it, and it looks so fucking good in this movie. It looks menacing. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I don't know how like scared the society is in Asian of like kind of offending religious ideas.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in America, I guess. Say there's like Christianity, there's Muslim faith, there's for just the general American tenets of religion and stuff like that, Mormonism, right, like that. We don't really like. I think Christianity is the only film sort of religion that is dealt with in cinema more than anything, because I guess it's as quote unquote a Christian nation,
right?
And you don't really see offshoots. It's always sort of like a weird bastardization of a main religion, and they just kind of make it spooky. In this, when I see an Asian horror film, there seems to be hundreds of thousands of like Asian religions because I don't know, there's so many gods or something and stuff like that. And you never know like what's real or what it's like. I don't believe obviously this is a real religion. They just made like an offshoot of another one. So I wonder if anybody ever really gets. I assume a hardcore religious people in Asia would be offended by this. But I always wonder if it's like, you know, do they like do a special like prayer before they make this stuff up, or is it because they know it's bullshit that they don't have to pray for it? But it always seems like because we're not from this Eastern Providence, it seems a little bit more spookier, because I think it brings an element for a Western audience to be like, well, I don't know what this religion is about. It's a little spooky. Because for some reason, other nations will think other nations' religions are more primitive for some reason.
Or at least like unknown to us,
unknown, right?
Yeah.
It's something a little bit more scary. Primitive in the sense of not that people are stupid, that it's more like, it's more based in a deeper, darker fear, as opposed to religion, where it's like the religion over in the United States is more about like, oh, don't have sex before you're married, or get struck by lightning, or some shit like that.
Well, it's a lot of like the sort of bastardization versions where people are just using it to their own benefit or whatever.
So I will always give that plus, because when you don't know what a religion is and it's from a completely different sect of people, I think that adds to the whole experience of a film. So I like that aspect, but there's certainly something that's missing in this film, and I don't know what it is.
Right.
I don't think it's a terrible movie. I think that it's kind of stuck in the general Asian horror movie tropes, and the characters are engaging and fine, and I believe the relationship between the mother and daughter and the foster father, like they felt realistic, and I like that. The mother should have never fucking readopted her own kid.
No kidding.
She felt that she had this. I don't even think she really felt that she was cured of this curse throughout the whole movie. And the clever thing in this film is that the movie curses the audience while watching it. I know I saw another movie that did that. I don't know if it was the medium itself or something else, but I like that clever idea. Like and it's funny because I'm so like spooked out by this kind of stuff that I just like would mute whenever they're doing that chant in the movie. The chant is very.
You didn't chant along?
Absolutely not.
Come on,
even though it's not real. But I like the chant aspect. That's great. I love the interactivity with the audience. You know, when they did that whole not kaleidoscope. I forget what that effect is called, when they use an image and it's moving, but it's not
and you
moving
can spit
at the same time.
With your eyes.
Yeah, I
in
like
both
that
directions.
interactivity. Yeah, I like the interactivity with the audience. But then when you sit back and think about it, it's like, who did that? Like, who sat down and watched the movie die,
and edited it,
get haunted, and they put a fucking whole cartoon at the beginning of this? Like, who did that? Like, in reality, it takes you out of it, because if I saw somebody die, I'd be like, holy shit, look, it's a ghost killing somebody. I wouldn't make a whole fucking diorama at the beginning of it. It's like this movie called Diary of the Dead by George Romero, one of the worst zombie movies I've ever seen, which is supposed to be found footage of a guy recording all his friends dying in front of him. But there's a synth soundtrack. He added a synth soundtrack to his friends getting. It's like Faces of Death, and the people camera put fucking clown music to their friends dying. Is there anything else you want to add with this film? Did you think overall it was worth watching, or is it something that you can put on the background?
I think it's worth watching. I enjoyed watching it. I think it could have been maybe told a different way, in a stronger way, but I think ultimately it was interesting and a fun watch. Yeah,
there's about a bunch of stuff you have to sit through at the beginning to get to the real meat, which is the spookier aspects of the film, which is the past material, which I think is better. There's movies that kind of did it better, like Ganjiam Haunted Asylum, I think we saw, right?
Right.
Which is the Korean horror film about TikTokers or whatever the fuck, the streamers going to a haunted building. So with this type of film, I think it's as good, but it could have been better.
Yeah.
I love when they take the sheet off that statue's face and there's just a hole in there. And it's that, to me, that was fucking like spooky as hell.
Yeah.
But I would say this is worth watching it for the second half of this film. So you got to go. It's not that the first half is really horrible.
It's just a little slow burn,
it's a little slow burning,
fair.
but it pays off if you like that spooky kind of Asian horror films. So with that, I would rate this movie about a 6.5 out of 10. Breaking mirrors and causing chaos in tunnels that they told you not to do so, just for the gram or the TikTok or whatever. Thea, what rating would you give Incantation 2022?
I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Somebody telling you not to feed your child for 7 days or else they'll die. And then going, what? They died?
Was water not part of that also? Like, is that,
I don't know. I'm like, that kid would die.
And you don't know if the kid survives or not or anything like that. That's the part where it's just like, oh.
Well, I think the end. So I think that little end clip video of her is supposed to be the kid survived, basically, because so many people watched this.
Oh, so maybe there's some sort of happy ending. She's probably cursed with that kid, right? It has to be.
Everybody's cursed who watches it, right? But it lessens because of how many people have watched.
Right. So with that, Thea, what's the final word?
Office.